Thank you for this opportunity for all of us to sit together and have this discussion. I'm really looking forward to it because we have here representatives from two very large multinational companies that rely on globally distributed supply chains, and then we've got a range of people with a lot of experience in technology. And as I've been sitting through the last day and a half of sessions, I've realized that we've spent a lot of time talking about technology. We just had Pierce say that he's a technophile and thinks that's where the solutions are. What I'd like to do is have a bit more of a discussion about the social side of things. The reason I'm coming from this is this session is about water stewardship. What we're finding is that companies like PepsiCo and Nestle and many other companies around the world are recognizing that they need to do something more than just work within their operations. Klaus was already saying this in terms of the supply chain that Nestle has and needing to recognize that. And as that is happening, there's been a movement towards setting some approaches to thinking about how companies can engage in water stewardship, which has economic benefits, but also environmental and social benefits. And so why don't we start with just a quick introduction down the line, your name and affiliation, and then we can go into the questions.
Good morning, I'm Lise Dahl-Baumann. I'm the Director of Water Stewardship for PepsiCo's Global Food and Beverage Operations.
Good morning, I'm Glenn Trickle from Xylem. I'm responsible for engineering and technology in our treatment business.
Good morning, my name is Franz Kubacek. I'm from Austria. We have a natural treatment company for water.
Good morning, my name is Pierre Tozina. I'm a CEO of Enesis, and we develop transportable solutions for drinking water.
For those who are here this morning, I'm still Klaus Konzelmann, representing the Nestle Group, Head of Safety, Health and Environmental Sustainability, and I tried to add a few different messages from what I said this morning.
Hello, my name is Howard Ullman from the US. The name of my company is Atmospheric Water Solutions.
Okay, thank you. So why don't we start with you, Lise? What I'm very interested in is what you're learning through your activities, both in your operations and your supply chain, about the balance between the technological improvements that you can make and the social structures that need to be around that, whether it's engaging with communities or whether it's engaging more with regulations and governance systems.
Thanks, Ruth. So let me give you a very short description of what I do. My job is to worry about water for PepsiCo's global food and beverage operations, meaning in the plant, in the supply chain, in the community. If it's about water, I get to worry about it and try to find solutions to those worries. The key thing for us, the overarching, I guess, theme on all counts is it's all local. Right? So when we look at how do we become more water efficient in our operations, there are certain things that make sense everywhere. You should fix leaks everywhere. You should have certain best practices everywhere, but there are some things that only make sense in a certain local context. We should not assume one size fits all in terms of our operating technology or in terms of our approaches to outside challenges. It's very important that we not decide that because, for example, rainwater harvesting makes sense in one place, that it makes sense everywhere. Clearly, in some parts of the world, that won't be the case. That's a very dramatic example. But it's very important to understand local context in terms of what's going on, what are the challenges, what are the accepted practices. In order to execute with that in mind, we need to be talking to the local community, to the local government, to potential partners. We try to do this everywhere we can. We interact with even our competitors. We even interact with Coca-Cola Company, trying to understand, are we in the same place? Can we do the same thing? Can we do something together so that 1 + 1 = more than 2? We also make sure that what we are doing is acceptable to the people in the surrounding community. PepsiCo was an early recognizer of the human right to water, and one of those planks, one of the 5 planks underlying human right to water, is acceptability, is what we're doing in line with what the community expects of us. So again, it's all local. You need to understand what's going on locally, and you're not going to understand that without interacting with the people with whom you share water.
Thank you very much. So Glenn, as a technology provider, obviously you probably believe that you have some key answers to the water problem. Are they sufficient, or is there something else that needs to have around the technology for them to be successful?
Okay. Thank you, Ruth. I guess when I look at the interface between kind of technology and the social solution and water stewardship, to me it strikes me that we have a lot of the capabilities present, but the limiting factor is typically not the technology, it's the regulatory and social side and policy side. So obviously our engineers and scientists get excited about solving water challenges in the most efficient, optimal way, but I think the key is really to look at how do we come up with both the best technical solution from both an environmental standpoint, which is kind of a new part of the discussion, if you will, on the environmental impact, to link that with the more traditional life cycle cost and quality human dimensions to come with the solution. So I guess building off what you said previously, it's we have to act locally, but think globally in terms of what is the overall holistic solution to this. And I think that's an integral part of our thinking on how to solve this.
Thank you. And Franz, you also come from more the technology side, but I was wondering, in your opinion, how you would see there being business opportunities as a technology provider in terms of also supporting the social development that is going to be needed to be able to put that technology to good use.
I'm come less from the technology side. I'm a landscaper from my profession, and I visit the nature. In Austria, we have a lot of natural water in a very, very well quality, and we can learn from nature how to make the treatment. And we have a very well solution to make natural water with microorganisms and other things. It's a very well way after normal water treatment to make the water in an optimal way for irrigation systems. And we can use it for agriculture and also for landscaping, for parks. So I think it's a very huge thing, bring people together out of the flats in very nice areas for walking, for talking, for restaurants, sitting outside because you have a better atmosphere. So it's very important to have nice water quality, and I think it's also necessary to make treatment because we have not so much water in the world, especially in this area, so we have to use it very often, not only one time. So treatment is a very, very big business, but not to earn money, to save the quality of life.
Very good. And Pierre, you have some experience of working in small locations, being able to bring new technologies to communities. What are you seeing about that interface between the technology that you bring and what kind of results that can have in terms of creating social value?
Yes, just a few words first about what we are doing. We developed an equipment that turns locally waste and wastewater into, well, good water and energy. This is a local solution, and we did that because water is the very first resource, many people said that, needed by human beings. No water, no life, no hygiene. And technology can change this. So transforming locally waste into valuable resources, such as good water and energy, changes the way local populations that don't have or have limited access to water and energy will grow and educate themselves. It will change, it allows to change the way people develop their own behavior, social behavior. It not only reduces disease, it also allows population to stay there where they are. By bringing a solution that allows to turn waste and energy into water, you will stabilize population, and this is a major social change, in my opinion. We are a fervent advocate of decentralized solution. A key is decentralization today. You cannot rely on big infrastructures. They are very expensive. Not everybody can afford it. And then local solutions, for me, is a way that will change social behavior among people.
Thank you. And Klaus, this is one more chance for you to tell us a little bit about Nestle. I don't know if all of you know, there's an organization called the Alliance for Water Stewardship. I'm actually replacing Adrian Sim, who was supposed to be here from the Alliance for Water Stewardship. They've just published a standard on water stewardship that is being taken up by some companies. And I know Nestle has some interaction with this. The goal of the water stewardship standard is to bring together those environmental, economic, and social benefits, and to help companies think about how they should act as water stewards, not just for their own benefits, but for benefits beyond their company. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience with the Alliance for Water Stewardship and the standard, and how that plays out given your extensive supply chain.
Right, yeah, thanks very much, Ruth, for this opportunity. I mean, we look at water through different lenses. We look at it as a business opportunity, for example, bottled water, as an operational challenge. But first and foremost, it's an environmental and a societal issue as well. And I would like to really focus on the societal part now. I came across a very interesting statement that was made by the director of the Environment Authority in Uganda, Dr. Tom Oporut. He was the winner of the UNESCO Institute for Water Education Alumni Award. And he said the beneficiaries of water should be its first guardians. The beneficiaries of water should be its first guardians. And I think that simple phrase already summarizes very well what the Alliance for Water Stewardship is trying to achieve, and what we've been committing to as one of the first companies trying that new standard that was just published a few months ago. And this standard is first and foremost about acknowledging responsibility. So whereas traditionally industries like ours would have said, well, you know, we look after our own manufacturing sites, our own direct operations, but we can't really solve all the problems upstream and downstream. And I think that has shifted significantly over the last 5 to 10 years, and we really acknowledge now a shared responsibility to go beyond our own direct impact on watersheds. It's basically the analogy many people are using. It's like putting several straws in a bucket, and if everyone kind of drinks from that, well, even if you drink less than the others, others drink more, and then you can waste it, that doesn't help your bucket at the end of the time. And so it's also about implementing action, both individually, again, but also collectively together, which are needed for sustainable management of shared water resources in a catchment area. That's also very important. It's not on an international level, it's not on a national level. It's really on a watershed or catchment area to bring the different users together. And obviously the long-term success of our company being based on agricultural raw materials is very much dependent and based on effective water stewardship in those watersheds. The priorities very clearly set out by the Alliance for Water Stewardship Standard is, first of all, water is a human right, so that has to be guaranteed first. Secondly, water has to be allocated in sufficient quantities to ecosystem functions, and again, that in many parts of the world is being violated these days. I mean, there are statistics from many parts of the world, rivers disappearing. I mean, China used to have 50,000 rivers of a certain water volume about 30 years ago. Of that, only 27,000 are still of those volumes, about halving. And I could cite similar figures from other parts of the world. So we also have to provide water for the ecosystem functions. But then thirdly, the third priority is obviously to provide water for agriculture and industrial use. And the key principle there is that governments should take the lead in establishing the policies. It's not really up to industry or individual companies to do that, but obviously we also see that in many parts of the world, the regulatory systems are not sufficiently developed enough to do that. So we at Nestle are willing to assist those processes to help bring in the different partners together, but also very important that we focus on measures that are cost-effective and relevant for the watershed. And that, interestingly, which was for us an important learning, is where, as I explained a bit in earlier sessions today, where we invested heavily in our own improvement of water usage in our own facilities, we're increasingly now finding that it might be more cost-efficient to spend some of our money helping others in the same watershed to improve their water efficiency, so there is enough left for everyone, including for our operations long term. I think these are some of the key principles, and if time allows, maybe we can go into one or two examples later.
Great, thank you very much. So Howard, obviously water is distributed unevenly around the planet. How do we address that from a social equity standpoint in terms of making sure that everybody has access to the benefits of using water when obviously there isn't water everywhere to the levels needed to be able to achieve those benefits?
Thank you, Ruth, for this opportunity. First of all, I'm not sure people know, but there's more water in the air than in every river, every stream, and every ocean. There is 380 quadrillion gallons of water on any given day right here. So my company focuses on a technology called atmospheric water generation. We're pulling water out of the air, which means obviously we're not affecting the water tables whatsoever. Over the past few years, this technology has had limitations because we're using compressors and a refrigeration system and we're condensing air. You can only get so big of a compressor and they use a lot of power. And I'm happy to say 2 weeks ago I filed a new patent where I now have a device that has no compressor, that does not even need electricity. We can run this system off heat. It's a heat absorption system, which means I can use propane gas, natural gas, or even heat from the sun. We have lots of sunlight. As far as distribution, equally for everybody, air is free for everybody. We don't charge anybody for air. So we have now the technology where we can distribute these devices anywhere in the world, where we now can provide the water for small towns, for cities that have no access to water, as well as places like Abu Dhabi. All we need is humidity. And luckily, in most of the parts of the world that are desperate for water, they have humidity. So it's my belief that in the future, we are going to have to use technology and start tapping into the most abundant source of water there is on Earth, and that's in the air. One thing we've started this year for the first time in my company is also, in regards to social programs, is water saving. We all have to save water. So we have now created a whole division about water saving where we are meeting with governments right now. I just came back from Saudi Arabia, and of course we've met a number of people here, where we're trying to create a 3-year program where we not only give kits out to hotels, to people, homeowners, but it all starts with educating the children. We did a pilot program in the UK where we took a small town, everybody had meters, we gave out kits to all homes in that town. Half the town saved 38 liters a day, not bad. But the other half of the town, we went to the schools with very simple playing cards for the kids, educational programs for the children, and that half of the town saved 58 liters a day. So we know we have to educate the population, and it really starts with the kids.
Thank you for that. So we have some time left. Thank you for all being to the point in the first round. I want to come back to you, Lise, because I'm going to challenge you a bit, because you said everything is local, that water is very much local. And yet you do have a global company with a globally distributed supply chain. Is there nothing about water from your perspective that is actually a global perspective? And I ask this in part because we have such an imbalance, I would say, between water and climate, in that, you know, climate is definitely considered a global issue and is being addressed as a global issue, whereas water tends to be focused more at a local level, and perhaps that is keeping us from maybe moving as quickly as we need to in terms of the protection of water. So is there any global aspect?
I would say that we have a global responsibility. We work with in organizations that are global. In fact, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, countries from around the world. Beverage Industry Environmental Roundtable, again, companies not quite from all around the world, but from many places. So we recognize it's a big responsibility, but the solution implementation is ultimately local. And you bring up our supply chain, which is, again, very scattered, very around the world. Again, the specific solutions, in order for them to work well, are locally, make sense in the local context. It's not to say that we only look at one place, it's to say that we look at many places and figure out the right approach in each of the different places.
Anybody else want to comment on the local versus global perspective? Klaus?
Well, if I may, I could chip in. I mean, we basically made that mistake 10 years ago when we told our 500 manufacturing facilities across the world to save water, and had like initially a top-down 2 to 3% annual savings target. And then we realized, well, that doesn't actually make sense, because we've got factories that are in areas of water abundance, where there are artesian wells that anyway, you know, where this water kind of gets to the ground, whether we are using it or not. So we have developed over the last few years a much more sophisticated allocation process where we make the biggest infrastructure changes and technology changes specifically in areas of extreme water scarcity, and have a rating of 1 to 5 in terms of water scarcity levels in order to inform our investments. So very clearly, yes, it started with a kind of a global awareness, but then the activities have to be tailored, as Lise already said, very much to the local operations and context.
Okay, thank you. Please.
And I think also, while the implementation of a solution is very local, a lot of the lessons that are learned, both from Klaus on the implementation example or technologies, can be leveraged in many locations. So what I see from our standpoint, that it's exciting just to see the engineers and scientists rely on their experience from other parts of the world, other cultures, different perspectives to solve a problem in a completely different region or portion of the world. So a lot of the lessons learned are, you know, in terms of reducing consumption, conservation lessons, reusing water, a lot of those lessons can be leveraged across a broad spectrum of the earth.
Mm-hmm. So we have a few minutes left. I sometimes get very discouraged about the outlook. You know, we only see water scarcity increasing for more people on the planet. We only see the overall water degradation increasing. Of course, there are improvements in certain locations, and we've been hearing about some of those success stories over this last couple days. But I guess I would like to ask each one of you in just a minute or so to say something about what makes you optimistic. What makes you optimistic that we are going to be able to find this balance between environmental benefits, economic benefits, and social benefits that is at the core of water stewardship? Why don't we come this way?
Okay. Well, one thing I can say is that because of the technology I have has no environmental impact because we're just pulling humidity out of the air. And now with this new technology I've just patented where we're looking at about $2 a cubic meter, which is the same price as desalinized water, I'm hoping that we can get some of these large government and utilities to look at this technology that isn't impacting the environment. That's very important because many areas they're taking brine and putting it back in the ocean at a high temperature and the fish are gone. That's a shame. Until now, we haven't had a technology for many parts of this area in large quantities of water other than desalination. And that's what's exciting, that there are new technologies coming out that are have less environmental impact or no environmental impact, and I think we're going to have to look at those. So I'm pressing ahead as hard as I can to get that message across. There are other ways to get water other than from the ground or the ocean.
Thank you. Klaus?
Right, well, if we contrast that to the other sort of theme of the other half of the conference that focuses on energy and on climate change, where still we have a lot of uncertainties, even in terms of what the best and most cost-effective solutions are, I think where I'm optimistic on water is that we have the know-how to solve the water problems. We've got the knowledge, we've got the technology, we even would have the investment funds available if only the regulatory framework would evolve to leverage those investment funds there to build the infrastructure, and also obviously it's not just about the supply, also to do much more on the conservation side. So essentially it's not a technical problem, it's a societal, political problem. And that is why we are contributing also to the raising of awareness for this issue to be attacked in multiple different fora, be it at the United Nations level, but also at the different watershed level. It can be solved. All that is needed is probably that the situation gets even worse until people do more about it to eventually solve it.
Pierre.
I agree with the change of habit thing, but I believe that now the technology allows one thing that is very important, it's monetizing waste. By monetizing waste into energy, into water, you change a lot of things in local approaches, in local economies. And for me, this is fundamental.
I agree with both of them because nature is very powerful and human beings take a lot of power to destroy this environment. And so I think we have to take some power to make it well again. We have enough power. We have enough power to destroy it, so we have enough power to build it up again. So let's come together. There are a lot of solutions. And we will do it. I think we can.
Thank you.
I guess one of the things that leads me to be optimistic is this discussion we're having today, kind of around the whole water cycle. I get excited because we can talk about kind of the quality side, the first part of the water cycle, in terms of how do we cost effectively clean that water and what is the impact on how to use that effectively, kind of the use part, right? And then kind of the used water portion of how do we improve that to return it and close the cycle. And I think coupling that with kind of the resilience dimension to address climate change and to think about water more holistically overall leads me to be very optimistic.
Thank you.
I would say, I'm borrowing from actually two other answers. I think the fact that the dialogue is growing and growing, more and more people are aware. Little companies, big companies, little, like, small towns are into this. Kids are the answer, I am convinced. And more we're hearing around the world that little kids in school are learning about this and going home and telling their parents, fix that faucet, turn that off. And I think that is a huge part of the answer.
Okay, so thank you very much. This has been a very good conversation, and I'm glad that we were able to bring in a little bit more of the social dimension in the discussion. So I appreciate your input, and I hope that it has been of value to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.